everyone, and welcome to Elevate Your Life on Dr. T TV. I'm Dr. T, and this is the place where emotionally sensitive people get the emotional tools that they need to succeed. With me today is the most amazing guest that I am so excited to introduce you all to. And you probably already know who he is, but I'm going to read his amazing bio. With us today is John Gray. He's the author of the most well-known and trusted relationship book of all time, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. USA Today listed his book as one of the top 10 most influential books of the last quarter century. In hardcover, it was the #1 best-selling book of the 1990s, which is when I read it, and it's changed my life. Dr. Gray's books are translated into approximately 45 languages in more than 100 countries and continues to be a bestseller. Dr. Gray has written over 20 books. His most recent book is Beyond Mars and Venus. His Mars-Venus book series has forever changed the way men and women view their relationships. John helps men and women better understand and respect their differences in both personal and professional relationships. His approach combines specific communication techniques with healthy nutritional choices that create the brain and body chemistry for lasting health, happiness, and romance. His many books, blogs, and free online workshops at marsvenus.com provide practical insights to improve relationships at all stages of life and love. An advocate of health and optimal brain function, he also provides natural solutions for overcoming depression, anxiety, and stress to support increased energy, libido, hormonal balance, and better sleep. He has appeared repeatedly on Oprah, as well as the Dr. Oz Show, Today Show, CBS This Morning, Good Morning America, and others. He has been profiled in Times, Forbes, USA Today, and People. He was also the subject of a 3-hour special hosted by Barbara Walters. John Gray lives in Northern California, right near me, where for 34 years he has happily shared his life with his beautiful wife, Bonnie, until her passing in 2018. They have 3 grown daughters and 4 grandchildren. He is an avid follower of his own health and relationship advice. Hi, John, and welcome to the show.
Hi. What a bio, I'll say.
My gosh, that's you. You are so phenomenal. I'm so happy to have you on the show.
Happy to be with you. Happy to be with you.
So lovely. This is such a great moment. I can picture myself in my 20s in relationship struggles and reading your book and finally feeling like, oh my gosh, this is all starting to make sense to me.
Wow.
And here we are. Yeah,
wow.
Here we are. And here I am here helping people, in relationships that I didn't know that was going to be the case back when I was struggling with my own. So I just want to really thank you for changing the entire paradigm of relationships in our world.
Wow. I appreciate that. Thank you. I feel honored.
You're very welcome. So, as you know, our audience is full of amazing, emotionally sensitive people who a lot of the time, this beautiful gift of being empathic and sensitive can often lead to a lot of relationship difficulties. And in many cases, people really struggling their whole life to actually have the kind of relationship that they want with themselves and with other people and with life itself. So when you think about, our audience and how emotional sensitivity plays into the work that you do and teach people about relationship, what comes to mind for you?
Oh, what comes to mind is how hard it must be. And it is when you have empathy, you have the ability to feel what other people feel, even when they're not telling you.
Yes.
That it's like,
yes.
If you don't have this sensitivity, then your partner can be upset with you or whatever, and you don't know, but suddenly, whatever they know, and even more than they know. There's one of the, I've written so many books, but one of my books, first book was What You Feel, You Can Heal. And one of the dynamics of being a more sensitive person is that, and we'll start with childhood, because some of us come in more sensitive than others. And if your parents are suppressing, particularly your mother, because you're so connected to her, in that first 7 years of life, you're in the brain frequency of theta. So you absorb everything. And if you're sensitive, you absorb it even more.
Yeah.
So if mom is suppressing her frustrations, her anger, her hurt, her feelings of victimness, her sensitivity, if she's pushing that down, just trying to maintain, you know how we have a stressful day, it feels like it's boiling up, you want to push it down, like keep a lid on it. Let's keep a lid on it. What happens is when mom pushes down, one of the children, usually just one, takes it on, and they express what mom is feeling.
Yes.
And mom can't deal with it because she's pushing it down, and now she's pushing it down in the child, and that only creates kind of a combustion, which changes or reinforces that all very sensitive wiring in the brain that tends to have strong emotional reactions. Now, this is really, really a key thing, because it wasn't until about 6 years ago I was doing a conference for parents who'd lost the child. And of course, that's devastating. I mean, I'm now 2 years into the loss of my wife, Bonnie, of 34 years, and she's my soulmate. And I'm just devastated. Okay, I'm knocked over. For months, I didn't want to live. And I'm still 2 years, I'm still going through the waves of it. On one side, I've never been happier in my life because I'm so much more open-hearted. Sometimes we don't feel as much love until we lose something, and then you feel even more love, and then that love brings up all these issues that have been stuffed from childhood. So I've been through a lot of traumas and losses in my life. My dad was found dead on the trunk of his car when I was on a honeymoon with Bonnie. My mother died from an accident that was man-made. My younger brother committed suicide. My older brother had liver cancer. Bonnie went through all that cancer. Anyway, so I've had emotional issues, but I became a master of learning how to process emotions, and not just survive, but to thrive. Because the more we can feel what we feel and heal it, if we know how to do that. Now, that's what you're teaching people. I'm teaching people is not just feel it. You've got to heal it. That's a technology, that's skill. Then you grow from it. You actually grow in your ability to love and joy and happiness. But you pay for it. You got to do the work, and it is work.
It's a conditioning process of yourself, right? Because what you're describing, I really relate to so much as a very sensitive one coming in to teenage, my parents were teenagers. And so talk about feeling a little stressed to figure things out, and really relating to talking to thousands of people over the years. I imagine millions of people over the years that have all of these emotional dynamics. And really what you're talking about is that absorption process from the beginning.
Yeah, we absorb it in the beginning, and it changes our brain. And that's what I was mentioning, this conference I was at. And I talked to some scientists, and they found that the parents who were literally 10 years later still grieving, instead of getting through it and feeling more love and gratitude and forgiveness and all that, they were just taking antidepressants, and they were, they're down. They're just, their life is ruined. They'll never be happy again, and blah, 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 blah. For 10 years later, and they put them in an MRI scan, and then they put pictures of the lost child, and the brain lit up like they just took cocaine.
Wow. It's amazing.
And that's what we have to realize, is that negative emotions are natural. It's a part of our brain that doesn't yet have logic. That's the emotional part of the brain, a childlike part of the brain. It will take on these emotions, particularly of our parents. And if they're stressful, negative emotions, what happens is the brain can become wired to that fear. You see, fear produces way more connective tissue in the brain than love. This is very interesting.
I did not know that, John. Wow.
We have a bias towards negativity.
Boy, is that true, right?
That's survival. That's the lower part of the brain has a bias towards negativity, because it's about survival. So for survival, we don't need love as much as we need to protect ourselves from danger to survive.
Oh my
So
God.
if
Yeah.
something burns us, the brain's going to remember that. And so it's always going to be looking for when that could happen again. And that's survival. So when you're in the survival part of the brain is a bias towards looking at negativity. And then that part of the brain also uses negativity to get what it wants. Let's just to say you want your partner to love you more, so you get angry with them.
Yeah.
Some people do that. Some people feel like, oh, you hurt me so much. How could you do that? See, or some people go, oh, I'm so afraid. I don't know. I can't do it myself. These are things to motivate other people to give us what we want.
Got it.
When we use negative emotions to get what we want, the brain remembers that. And now when you don't have what you want, the brain starts looking for things to be upset about.
Wow.
To have negative emotions to get what you want. So the bottom line of that is we unconsciously use negative emotions to get what we want. And so negative emotions start to rise up when we want more. So we have to be very conscious about not using our increased sensitivity of hurt, our anger, our fear, using the expression of those feelings in order to get more from our partner. We have to be very careful, because otherwise we get addicted. The brain just goes right to it. If you don't have what you want, you're not feeling loved, not feeling supported. The brain has a bias of looking at what's wrong, and amplifying that. Yeah. So it's literally like a monkey brain. The monkey can't use words to communicate. So if I step on we're two monkeys and I step on your foot and you don't have words to communicate, you go, ow. And if I step on your foot again, you go, ow, ow. It becomes more magnified. So amplification of emotion becomes primitive communication. And so now an amplification of negative emotion also is addictive. So we get caught in a trap.
It keeps reinforcing itself, right? It just keeps reinforcing itself. John, this is so helpful. I am appreciating this so much. And as somebody who, I'm really an emotional scientist, studying emotions and all the process that goes on. And you've given us so much here, because there's the understanding, right, that we're in an emotional environment in our upbringing, and whatever is in that environment, you're absorbing it. If you're more sensitive, you're absorbing it. You think it's you, right? It's getting conditioned into your being, into your physiology. I'm hearing what you're saying. And then I really recognize this, that while you're trying to develop an identity, all these emotions are going on. And that's a very confusing part of like, who am I versus what these emotions are. That are they mine? Are they somebody else's? They're not yours.
They're not yours.
Yeah, they're not yours. So when you said about, this is really our focus at Dr. Tracy Inc. And this has obviously been your life's work, helping people emotionally process productively whatever emotion they are aware of. Because to your point, even as an adult, it's not necessarily your emotion, it's emotion you're aware of, right? Or you're conditioned for.
Yes.
Right. And then,
do you remember the Star Wars show when one of the planets blew up and the wise man that he says he went like this. What is it? There's a disturbance in the force.
In the force, yes. In the Obi-Wan.
I can tell you what's going on in the world. I feel it. Okay. Because see, the more spiritual you are, the more connected you are, and emotions connect us. Sensitivity is connection. So the more connected you are, the more you're affected by everything is a part of you. And we have to be clear about what is us and what is them. It's very, very important. And then here's an interesting distinction, develop a compassion. And that's not the pathway, that will be the result, but we need to know the result we're looking for, to develop a compassion that does not sympathize. So this is my own definition of compassion, because it's what has transformed my life. I've never read it anywhere, because compassion is empathy, and then you want to help somebody. That's your standard definition. But basically, wanting to help somebody is love as well. It's generosity as well. What compassion is, it's feeling empathy. We're the masters of empathy. That's our job. I can feel what anybody's feeling when they're not even feeling it. Feeling empathy, but not feeling sorry for them. If
Good.
you feel sorry for them, you suck it in. See, that's how you pull it in. I remember I was a young man. I'd see somebody who was poor and I'd feel so sorry for them and just pull it in. It would be like, oh, I can't even look at it. It's too painful, because I was taking risk. When you feel sorry for someone, a part of you is taking responsibility for them. I wish I could help you. I can't help you. As opposed to they are responsible for their lives. You know, they've created their life, and maybe I can help you get through it, but I'm not responsible for it. And somebody asked me today in one of my classes I taught, I said, well, how do you let go of feeling sorry for people instead of compassion, empathy, but not feeling sorry for them? That's the key thing. And I said, when you start feeling your own pain and you don't feel sorry for yourself, then you stop feeling sorry for others. Because when you feel sorry for someone, you're pitying them. Really, nobody wants to be pitied.
Right. And what you're really doing is, instead of having awareness, you're now in the experience.
Yes.
And I love what you're saying, because I think of this as, in the work that I have done also, which has saved my life and so many other people that we've helped. It's about being so aware of what you're experiencing emotionally and what's going on and what story you're telling yourself. Can you be aware of something that you're connected to because you're an empath, but then can you be connected without being affected, because you're actually making selections of what to do with what you're aware of? And this is what I'm hearing you saying, is that it really is about training yourself to select what's your outcome. If your outcome is compassion versus like, now I'm in this experience with you, it's not really helping the person at all. In fact, it's hurting.
It doesn't help them. And I remember for years, it didn't happen a lot, but I'd have somebody in counseling where empathy is really, my compassion is really what's helping these people. It's an invisible force, so to speak. It's, right. I've been there. I know what you're going through. I'm here with you. I'm here to help you. But I had to be very clear. I'm not trying to change them.
Nice.
That's their job to do. And if I would get in there and say, well, you should just do this, and then they will always resist you, and I would suck it in. It just gets sucked in. I'd be bummed out for the whole day. Because when we feel sorry for somebody, you feel, oh, victim, I should fix their problem. If they would only look at the world the way I do. So if I'm trying to change them, unless they're inviting and open to an idea, a suggestion, but people ask me, what should I do? And I say, that's up to you to decide. But here's some techniques that work that I do and so forth. But I have no attachment to changing them. When you feel sorry for someone, you want to change it. You wish they could be better, whatever, instead of recognizing this is their process. I can help them through their process if they invite my help. And invitation is very, very important. Yes. Not to take responsibility for other people. And I learned that. I'll just share one other thing, because you're such a good therapist. There's two therapists talking here.
I know. I love it. Yeah. I love it.
One day, a woman came into my office and she kind of looked like, very victim-like. And I just had a sense of, I didn't know exactly what was going on with her. And I said, how can I help you? And she said, I don't know if you can. And I said, okay, when you know that you can, whenever you think I can, come back.
Let me know.
Sometimes people are so entrenched that I'm a victim. Nothing's going to help me. Nothing's going to help me. And the last thing you want to do is try to get in there and convince them that you could help them.
Well, John, it is so good that us two therapists are talking, John, because, what we know is that the more emotionally sensitive of us, we are here to create a more emotionally elevated society.
Yes.
And what we talk about at my company, and this is a favorite saying of my team, we call it like our brand of empathy, because emotionally sensitive people who deeply want to help people and feel purposeful about that also end up being some of the most, overwhelmed, oversensitive, they're oversensitized and feeling so much of everything that's going on that they don't get to live out their full potential of service to making our society greater in the way that they really deeply desire. And so these things are so important, because you're talking about real emotional technology, which is what we're about as well. It's very specific. It's understanding, I know, as you talk about communication and what's being said, what's being believed. And earlier, I love when you said, I want to circle back to this, when you said, very importantly, that the brain is wired to go to negativity and look for negativity for survival. It really spoke to me because I've been saying for years that we're conditioned to see what's not working, what's wrong, who's not doing what. And I thought that was sort of more of our conditioning, and we're trying to flip the paradigm to see what is good and what is working. But what I'm getting from you is that that's really deeply wired in because of what you're saying. We need to know what's wrong, but we don't always need love.
Right.
Right. Speaking in the survival of the fittest kind of equation.
Survival of the fittest. This is literally, and we know this, but maybe some don't. Biologically, researchers, not me, but they'll say that the DNA in our brain, from the very primitive part of the brain, is the DNA of like dinosaurs, of heartless animals, snakes, lizard. So this is literally lizard DNA back here. And that's what's digesting your body. That's I got a burn on my hand, and 3 days later it's healed. Yeah. Well, who did that? I didn't do that. Who did it? Well, people have to recognize when you have emotions of rage, hurt, being frightened and scared, feeling ashamed, I've identified those as your very most primitive primal emotions. Okay. Who's doing that? This is completely survival programmed in. It's just like my finger healing, those emotions will come forth. Then you've got most of the brain is now the DNA of monkeys. And there's a lot of love there. There's a lot of joy there, a lot of happiness there. But the flip side of that is when we don't feel safe, it goes the other direction. We're not getting what we want. Yeah. I get a present. I'm so happy. I didn't get the present. I'm so sad. Okay. Right. I have somebody who compliments me. They acknowledge me. Oh, I feel a lot of love. They don't acknowledge me. Then I push them away. So this is the monkey brain. It doesn't have language, and it's all programmed. Okay. This is like my nose.
Feels like that. Yeah.
People go, we don't, it seems like a cliche that everything comes from childhood, but that's what we are. We are copies of our parents biologically and psychologically, and the actual programming in our brain comes right from them. Then what we have the ability to do through the things you help people is where you have sensitivities that aren't making you feel good and happy. We have the ability to reprogram the brain. And that's the good news of brain plasticity. They've proven this. You can literally, by willful ways of choosing to think and feel, you can rewire the brain pathways. And that was the first point I was making, is that when you use, let's say, complaining. Yeah. If you complain to get more, and of course, that's when we complain. I didn't do what I wanted. You kept doing this. You forgot to do that. Why don't you call me? You never say this. All of those complaints, just so people can know, we haven't got to the fix yet, at least my suggestions of a fix, but just to know what the problem is when you use complaints to get what you want. First of all, it doesn't get you what you want. It just pushes somebody away. Yeah. That's the first thing, but it feels good. It does feel good to complain. And that's because it's like an addiction. It produces dopamine. Dopamine is produced from danger. So when you're looking at danger, your brain gives you a boost of pleasure. As much as we don't want danger, I was just watching this thing on TV with big demonstration and riot and everything. Everybody's watching all day as they're going into the Capitol, and everybody's glued to it's danger. It's like, what's happening? They're just glued because it's new, it's different, it's dangerous, it's risk, it's uncertainty, and that produces addiction. That's pleasure. And we become addicted to our negative emotions, because that's always a negative emotion as a response to a thought that says you're not getting what you should be getting. You're not getting what
something wrong, right?
Something wrong, danger. Yeah.
I'm so glad. I mean, I've been studying this for a long time, but having it come from you is very important for all of us, very validating in that, I've been saying for years that our conditioning that just is literally scanning for what's wrong, what's not there, what's not good enough. I kind of thought to myself, maybe that's how like humans just struggled in the earliest of ages and just kept going, there's not enough. And maybe that has something to do with it. But ultimately, it was also one of the most liberating things when I came to understand, out of like a desperation to be less sensitive and less reactive, and actually be able to put in my mind, put in my focus what I want, to be able to shift that. And instead of when I feel a negative emotion, to just ask myself, what do I want to create, Tracy? What do I want to create? And I get an answer. And the moment I start tracking toward just whatever it is, it could be a beautiful lunch, or it could be world peace, whatever it is, I'm now shifting the pattern.
Yes.
As you were saying, the pathway.
That's one technique, which is so good, because what you just shifted, all negative emotions is I don't want, it's resistance.
Exactly.
It's either I don't want the future, which is fear. I don't want what just happened is anger. I don't know what I thought of the disappointment I have. I don't want that. So the disappointment is the resistance is there, and resistance is I don't want. Now that's see, and what you just said is now I'm going to ask myself, what is my intention? What is it I'm wanting? Simply to write out what you want at that time is practice. You know, one of my friends has these little cards and he says, okay, see how many things you can want that in a minute, just write them out, write them out, write them out. That's training the brain to focus in the direction of what do I want rather than what is it I don't want. And that becomes the habit. And there's always a bias towards what I don't want. And when we have stress hormones already being produced, what happens is the brain automatically goes into a bias of what is wrong rather than what's right. It just takes over. When you have a cortisol response, you're no longer experiencing full control over what's inside.
Right.
And that's where, you know, in my new book, Beyond Mars and Venus, I talk about how you can use your relationships through certain relationship skills. If you're a woman, how to increase the female hormones that will lower your stress level so you can have blood flow go back to the front part of the brain, where you can reflect on any negative emotions and question them and change them. See, there's a certain flexibility we can find. First of all, we have to know what to do with that flexibility, but we have a potential, but we lose that potential if we're in chronic stress. You know, how many people go, oh, I want to let go of my anger. I just want to hold on to it. My mind just goes on to it. Or I feel so hurt and it just stays there. And you want to say, hey, I want to let it go. I want to be beyond this, but it just grips us. So there's a place called gripping negative emotions where you can't move out of them. And you can look biologically, if you're a woman, that will occur when your estrogen levels are low and your testosterone levels are higher. You see, there's a difference between men and women when it comes to stress hormones. For men, stress hormones get produced when his testosterone is low. For women, stress hormones get produced when her estrogen is low for 30 days, for 15 days of the month. And the other side of it is after ovulation, if her progesterone levels are low, she will experience a stress response. And what a big challenge for women today, besides the whole category of hypersensitivity looking at, is simply the pressure on women to be so independent today. And sometimes the hypersensitive person is so easily hurt in relationships that they disown that part of them and they stay busy trying to be independent rather than also increasing in their life opportunities to be interdependent.
Oh, nice.
So estrogen is produced when you're depending on someone. Okay. This is biology. If I need your help and I trust that you're there for me, I can lean on you for something, then my estrogen goes up. And that's really, really important for women, not so important for men.
Okay.
Anytime a man is angry, his estrogen is too high. His testosterone is too low. Wow. But anytime a woman is angry, it's when it's either her estrogen is up, but she doesn't trust. And so therefore her testosterone comes up, her male side comes up to protect her, right, and her estrogen goes down. This is so amazing. We're really like simple plumbing. Female hormones, you feel good if you're a woman, and male hormones, you feel good if you're a man. And if a man has high male hormones and high female hormones in balance, you feel even better. And that's called making love.
I love it.
That is, it's making love. It's when you can have both parts of you. And the challenge today for a lot of the hypersensitives is, like you said, we come into this world because we feel we have a mission. And two things here. One, when you have a mission, you really feel that sense of mission to help. It's because you have already born into you the access of your male and female sides.
Yeah.
And so we don't have a culture yet that supports finding balance between the male and female sides. That's what we're trying to do with the Mars Venus ideas, is to embrace both sides of you. And the other side of it, which is very interesting, and my belief is that we have many, many lives, and we come into this lifetime with certain mission and purpose. And some of us come in with a big job to do. We have a big job with a lot of compassion for the world and wanting to help people. We will be born into a family that's very dysfunctional. Very dysfunctional. And you kind of think, why does that happen? It's like, you imagine there's a God, and God wants to send his angels or her angels. Where are those angels going to go? To the places of greatest darkness. That's where the light is needed. And that's important, because sometimes people who are very beautiful souls, how could I be so beautiful soul if I was born into this family? I just don't relate to anybody. And how did I get stuck with these people? And there's that sense of, I just don't fit in. And that amplifies our ability to absorb their limited thinking, their limited beliefs. And then as we live our lives out and heal and transform those beliefs that were programmed into us through our early childhood, that's the work we do to help the world.
It is.
Because when you overcome any negativity inside of yourself to find love again, not only does your soul grow, but it helps the rest of the world, because we truly are all connected on some level.
John, I love this so much, and I really encourage everybody to get your book. It's Mars and Beyond Mars and Venus, correct?
Well, that's the one on the hormones. That's my recent one for relationships. It's using relationship skills in order to balance your hormones. And that's built upon the Men Are From Mars ideas, which you read when you're in your 20s. And they're so much fun when you really get it, because if you're hypersensitive, we still have to focus on that aspect of who we are so we can go through this world without absorbing everything. But on another level, when we don't understand a situation, we tend to absorb more because we're under stress. And that would be like the cave idea. I know many women are listening. They've been in relationships and they're sensitive. And what you feel right away is when a man detaches. You see, there's a connection, and you feel it so strong. And a man, unlike a woman, can detach so quickly and has nothing to do with her. Nothing to do with her. And that's really, really important. That's the idea of men in their cave. A man could be in his cave. He just needs to back off and rebuild his testosterone. When I wrote Men Are From Mars, I didn't have the hormonal knowledge, but here's how it works very simply, is for men, in order to feel well-being, they need to have 10 times to 20 times more testosterone than a woman.
Wow.
Now, what rebuilds testosterone is independence and disconnection. Sometimes you feel like I just need to be on my own space. Multiply that 10 to 20 times and you have a man. That's what we need. And then we have our own space, our testosterone goes up, and then we go, I'm horny as can be. I need to connect with the female. And if you look at what sex is, it's men going into the woman. And what we want to do is elevate that to a higher level, which is not just going into her physically, going into her mentally. Because when I can listen, and this was a gift of being a therapist for me, was have all these women for 10 years. In the beginning of all this, I was just a counselor in a room, and I had a waiting list of women because I learned how to listen. And I'm an empath, and that was very healing, because when somebody's in pain, the most important thing, not a fix, they just need to feel connection. And I could understand their pain. I had gone through a divorce before I married Bonnie, and I understood pain. And so these people would come and I would be present with them. And what's interesting is I never felt sorry for them, because I had been through so much pain in my divorce. I was just married 2 years, but I was devastated by it. My wife fell in love with another man, and that was devastating. And we were teaching a class on relationships. So now I was fired. I couldn't teach on relationships if my own marriage failed. So that was all. It was a double whammy. My male side, how am I going to make money? And my female side, I've just been rejected by my wife. She fell in love with another man who she married. So this was like huge. But what it did for me is using the technologies that you teach and I teach, it was a trigger to open up some experiences from my childhood that I'd completely forgotten, opened up that door. And then because I used the technology to process the feelings and come back to love, I did that again and again and again. And maybe 9 months later, I had no anxiety in my life, and I never have had since. And I used to be one of these people with huge anxiety. I mean, before I'd give a lecture or talk, I went through hell, be like crazy. And I want to say this for hypersensitive people, because I am one. Here's what happened. My first talk I gave was on transcendental meditation. I was a young teacher of transcendental meditation when I was 18. I was the youngest one at that time. And I gave my lecture, and before I'm giving my lecture, and it's completely memorized, so what's there to be afraid of? It's just a little group. I was terrified. My body was filled with anxiety. I was so uncomfortable. I stood in front of that audience and I fainted. I felt literally on the ground. And they all thought, oh, he's dead. He's giving a talk on
this is not very meditative. Yeah.
Now, the point I'm making here, it's a really good point. I felt like, well, maybe I'm just doing the wrong thing. Maybe this isn't right for me. Because, we have this feeling that when you do the right thing, it's all going to be the right feelings. Not always. It actually, that when you follow your soul's desire, sometimes you'll have the greatest fear. Because if you fail at being you, that's disastrous. If you fail at being something other than you, that's much safer. You can always go, well, that's not really who I am. Yeah. And so I was really feeling like, maybe this isn't right. I shouldn't do this. And then luckily, I read this article in Rolling Stone magazine, an interview with John Lennon of the Beatles. And they asked the Beatles, well, John, why did you stop touring? Because they only toured for 3 years. As famous as those guys are, they stopped touring.
Oh,
and
that's right.
He said, we had to stop because before every performance, we got so sick and had so much anxiety and throwing up and just feeling horrible. It was just so bad. Wow. And you kind of think, wow, if John Lennon can feel bad before talk, I can. But here's the dynamic, which made it even more poignant for me. I saw the Beatles when I was a young kid in a big arena, and they came out, and how everybody would scream when they come out. And I said, I'm not going to scream. And as soon as they came out, I stood up and I'm screaming. It was some kind of Beatlemania thing.
It was.
You couldn't even hear them. So literally, they had nothing to fear. They could have been playing an album. What performance did they have to do? There was so much screaming going on. And yet they had so much fear. So that's called an irrational fear. And if we could actually look at almost 90% of any upset we have is an amplification of what would be a normal response. And our sensitivities are a gift, but they also, if it becomes an addiction, then we become addicted to these, what some people call ants, automatic negative thoughts, negative thoughts. They just come in there and they come in there and they loop. That's another thing that happens for people. They cycle.
They keep cycling.
And that's where our work comes in. You just go, stop. My mind is giving my body false messages. I even do my hands, you literally.
To change the cycle, right? Because this is so good for everybody to understand, right? That these are ultimately emotional cycles that get built in. They're going on. And I really also like putting this kind of in the category of reactivity, right? These are stress responses, but a lot of times it's helpful for people to have things a little even like simplified at another level. Like if you're reacting and as you said, it's feeling a stress response, my sense is that it's about building that space in to know that that's happening and to be able to like we were talking about, select what you're wanting so that, because otherwise I do feel like emotionally sensitive people have all these gifts to give, John, and it's really important for our society, but they can be either hanging in the background or self-critical or just so much of the sensitivity makes it feel like, they're not able to completely fully show up in life the way they want to, which is a whole nother bad cycle for them.
It's a fear of not being seen and heard and appreciated. And it hurts. I mean, it's painful. And
it's really painful to be that way. Yeah.
And here's again, a bigger picture. And there's still time to go into some basic technology from my books. And I would start with my little book, What You Feel You Can Heal. It's a 2-hour read. It's mostly cartoons. First book I wrote. My heart. It didn't understand the gender. the gender, I became like this master of being upset because I healed all this stuff after my divorce, processing my emotions. And then my friend Jack Canfield, we're buddies. We're actually two of the biggest authors in the world, but we started out nobodies together, supporting each other. He wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Yeah.
And Jack, he said, John, you're so good at helping people go from anger to love, hurt to love, hurt to feeling better. But, it's like a cow comes into your house and puts down manure. You're really good at shoveling that manure out and getting good benefit out of it. But why don't you learn how to close the door so the cow doesn't get in? So those are two different dynamics. This is where I wrote Men Are From Mars, is learning how to correctly interpret our partner's behavior, because women under moderate stress do not disconnect. They disconnect under big stress.
Yeah.
Okay. Men disconnect with little stress, and men actually amplify negativity under big stress. Whereas women's brain, compared to a man's brain, under moderate stress, she will have 8 times more blood flow to the emotional memory. Wow. That means she's under stress. Under little stress, she's going to be looking and remembering everything that's ever gone wrong.
Terrible.
Men will tend to do that when it's a bigger stress. They can still do it, but it's because they're producing more cortisol than a woman would need to. And this is like, and so then here's a distinction. So if a man is a little stressed, he detaches. So it's like no big deal. It's not you notice men will say this all the time to women, and it doesn't work. That's why I have to point out to men, it works for you. He'll say to himself, it's no big deal. Don't worry about it. Just forget it. I can handle it tomorrow. Well, it's not that important anyway. So who cares? I'll fix something. See, we have these mechanisms to disconnect from our emotions.
Right.
And that will rebuild testosterone. Okay. Disconnecting from emotions rebuilds testosterone. Then you can come back to your emotions from a place of love and heal them. That's for men. Now for women, if they disconnect from their emotions and just push them down, they just get stronger and stronger. Yeah. And women have, again, this is biology. And, people say women are more emotional. That's not true, because when a man has higher stress, he becomes more emotional. And at a very high stress level, women often become less emotional. They detach, they become cold. So they're hot. And so when a woman has a stress reaction or she's emotionally upset, a man thinks she's saying it's a big deal, when really she's saying it's not a big deal, but it will become a big deal because he'll keep saying it's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. It's not a problem.
Oh, it's the worst.
So he wants to minimize, and she will amplify, and she will amplify. He will minimize. So this is a very, very important distinction between common, it could be reversed sometimes, but it's common gender difference here, which is if you want a man to hear what you're feeling, and that could be so beautiful. There's 2 techniques with that one, but the first one is, here's a magic $1 million phrase. Is Bonnie taught it to me, my dear wife. She would complain about stuff, and she would notice my resistance. Nobody wants to hear complaints, And she said, now, John, I just want to talk for a few minutes, tell you how I feel. Already my blood pressure is going up, right?
John. Yeah.
Now, then she said, and it's not a big deal. And so as soon as she said, it's not a big deal, what did she minimized? I would amplify. Oh, what is it? What is it? If you want a man to come closer to you, minimize, and then he amplifies. But what women will tend to do when a man doesn't know how to listen, she says, you didn't do this, and she can feel the resistance. He has to resist, because anytime, if he's somewhat sensitive, if he's not sensitive at all, he won't. But generally speaking, we all have some sensitivity if we fell in love. Yeah. As soon as you have a criticism of him, his reaction is, I failed. And so his testosterone goes down, his cortisol goes up. Now he becomes more sensitive. His estrogen goes up when his testosterone goes down. See, this is so interesting. It's all basic plumbing. And then we get the brain, which is the brain then gets wired. Once we start using emotions to get what we want, then we will tend to lean into that more as an automatic reaction.
Keep cycling it. Yeah, keeps recycling.
there was a, the cave, for example, where men pull away. That literally is he doesn't think anything. It's an automatic reaction to pump up his testosterone. He just disconnects to rebuild testosterone. And women don't understand this. They think, what did I do wrong? They might ask him questions. They always want to know, what are you feeling? Because he's not feeling anything. And that freaks you out. Of course it freaks you out. And so you imagine he must be mad at me, because for you to suddenly detach that much, you'd have to be very, very angry. It'd have to be a big deal. But when men pull away, it's not a big deal. And when women get upset, it's not a big deal, men. Just because he's looking through his glasses, for him to be really upset, it has to be lions and tigers and bears.
Got it.
So if she's a little upset or she's upset about something, it's not necessarily lions and tigers and bears, but his mind is thinking she's saying it's a real big deal. So he will tend to minimize. Then she will make it a big deal. These are automatic reactions. So that's the $1 million phrase, which is, it's not a big deal. Even though part of you, this little monkey part of us that's having this automatic thing, this is a big deal. This is a big deal. And I brought up that example because you were saying a minute ago, you just have to have this presence of mind to know this is part of your programming. This is an amplification due to the amount of stress you're feeling today, or how this reminds you of something they've done before, or this is actually, when you get the biggest amplification, it's when you're feeling safe and loved. This is one of the paradoxes of relationship. You search out, you find this wonderful person who loves you. A part of you goes, now I can be me. I can feel safe. And when you suddenly feel safe, all of the emotions that were pushed down because it wasn't safe slowly begin coming up. And when they come up, they don't say, hi, these are my unresolved feelings about childhood.
John.
This is about my partner. This is about my job. This is about the world. And we project onto the world and make it justify what we're feeling. Otherwise, we feel crazy. And what we have to recognize with practice, it gets easier to realize anytime you're having negative emotions, doubt whatever you're believing. It's not true. The truth makes you feel good. The truth makes you feel good, at peace. I remember one man, he ripped me off of like hundreds of thousands of dollars, leading me on in this whole thing. And finally, I discovered that he was sick with cancer and needed the money for treatments. And all my upset with him went away. I just needed to know the truth. It was gone. Wow. But if I didn't know that, it was some big scam, all this anxiety was going on inside of me, and upset was going on. How could you just understand and to hear the truth? And what we need to know, this is really tough for hypersensitive people, is the amount of lies that we're getting on TV, whether it be the right or the left. What you're only getting is bias. Both sides have big bias. So you're always getting partial truth. Partial truth causes us to get stuck into this primitive reactive brain. And we need to recognize nothing on TV is true. And the best TV to watch is when it's fiction, because then you know it's not true. So you're listening to it. This is the whole point of comedy and drama from the Greek days. You get to feel all these experiences and you know it's not true. That's healthy. See, that's healthy for you.
Wow, John, this is like, obviously we're having a masterclass here with your amazing, all of your technology, all of your perspective. I just feel, I feel transformed. And I think how important this is right now, because obviously we are in the most emotionally reactive society, the most emotionally reactive chapter, full of so many emotions and so many things that are just mind-boggling. And it for me, it connects to something you were saying earlier as well, which where you were mentioning the grieving process that you're going through. And I also want to just share my condolences.
Thank you.
To you and what you and Bonnie created, because it's helped so many of us. And she's here with us. I really feel that she's here with us. And I think about my dad passed away in August of 19. And so it's my first real big experience of processing grief. And so you and I both know that the atmosphere is so full of so many negative emotions right now. So, thinking about the most emotionally sensitive people are just absorbing this atmosphere. Like you said, you just know there's this disturbance in the
The
force.
force,
So
exactly.
there's a disturbance in the force.
Yeah, yeah.
This is what it's like something's happening in Uganda. I can feel into it. And so what is your, we're looking at a lot of this today, but what have you, out of all of what we've been dealing as a society and as an emotional expert, what are the things that you are most recommending to people at this time that are helping you navigate so many things and just being in this atmosphere together?
I wish we had more time that I could go through the whole technology. I realize so much time has passed, but I'm going to do it real shortly. First of all, I want to give a reference. The best book on what I'm about to say is my book called Mars and Venus Starting Over. Those are all my different books, 28. But Mars and Venus Starting Over, it's geared towards people who are going through a breakup in a relationship, but everything applies to the loss of a parent, a loss of a business, everything. It's how to deal with the loss, the sensitivity inside of us at that time. So the number one technique when there's a disturbance in the force, and I get triggered, everything is just a trigger. It's the 90-10 principle. The 90-10 principle is 90% of anything that's upsetting you has nothing to do with what just happened and the disturbance of the force. It's just a trigger. What your partner said or did, 10% of what it's causing, 10% of what's really upsetting you. Now, good way to visualize this. Here, I got this shirt on. Imagine you come over to me and say, "Hey, John," and give me a nice little pat on the shoulder. I say, "Hey, good to see you." But on another day, you come over and say, "Hey, John," you give me a pat on the shoulder. I go, "Ow, that hurts. How could you do that?" I said, "I just gave you a pat on the shoulder. Why are you getting upset with me?" And I said, "Well, look what's under the shoulder." And I pull up my shirt and you see this big gaping wound. That's my sensitivity. My sensitivity has come up. That will help me to also recognize, oh, I'm so sorry. It's not about me. It's about that. People will be much more apologetic and compassionate to you if you go, it's not about you. It's about me. You can share almost anything with your partner because when you're hypersensitive, but when you do that, it hurts. And then you come back to them and say, "Now I'm sorry. I threw that on you because I know it's not really your fault, but it was a trigger. It brought up my feelings from when I was a little girl or my little boy. And I was triggered by that. And I'd love to be able to tell you this story from my childhood where that happened. And then you can talk about all your feelings as if you're talking to your parents or your child. And the husband or guy will listen and go, or wife, and go, "Oh, it's not about me." Because see, that's how I became so good at this is women came into my office. I was good at empathy and asking questions. They go deep into their feelings. I never was defensive because they weren't upset with me. If you're hurt, whenever you hurt, when you say, "I feel hurt by what you said," what you've just done is you've offended that person. You see, it's the most dangerous phrase in the world is to say, "You hurt me." Every man only wants to be your hero. You just cut off his balls just like that. You hurt me. As opposed to when you do that, it triggered all this stuff inside of me. 90% of that is all about my childhood. And I hope you can be patient with me as I grow through this and learn to heal this, as opposed to "you should change, you're bad, you're no good." No, you're a good guy. And I'm a good person. It's just I've got stuff from my childhood and that triggered it. Because if you don't take responsibility for those feelings, then your brain has to put it on something that happened right now. And the reality, this is Freud told us this, the reality is 90% of what comes up as a response is your past. Yes. Unfortunately, that became politically incorrect because men would misuse that and say, "Oh, you're just overreacting." And that's an invalidation rather than help me understand where this comes from, what's going on inside of you. Then I don't have to take it personally. And as a person who's upset, to own that responsibility. And this is something that triggered me from my past. I remember one time I was at a talk and a woman was talking and a guy made a snide remark, just a little remark like, "Oh, you would, wouldn't you?" And she took it so personally, right? She's hypersensitive for sure. She took it so personally and she was so hurt by that. And there's nothing he could have said that would have been a good apology. I'm so sorry I said that, but that's your true feelings. I know that's your true feelings. And so it would be like a permanent scar. He was so wise. He said to her, he said, look, I want to apologize for making that comment. I realized that when you were saying that thing, it triggered these feelings about my mother. And she would always say da, 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 da. And I felt so awful. It had nothing to do with you. I'm so sorry. That she could hear. See, is when people take responsibility for their strong reactions inside to recognize. And one other quick thing is to mention the basic technology in all my books is a very important understanding, never to suppress a feeling, just don't use it to get more. Don't use it to get more. And then what you do is you use it to be more, to come back from feeling negative to feeling positive. Now, it's interesting. I have another friend who teaches, writes books and says, there's no such thing as a negative emotion. They're all positive. I go, no, no, no. Have you ever had somebody be angry at you? Someone feel, oh, I feel so hurt. I blame you. No, there are negatives and positives. That's the world we live in. And if you have negative emotions, don't throw them on others. Recognize this is stuff when we were a child and we didn't have the ability. We just absorb it. We now have the ability, if you're sensitive, you can do this better than anybody because you have a consciousness that can reflect on what you feel. Once you can know what you feel, now you can let go of those feelings. You can't let go until you realize you're holding on tight. But you have to realize you're holding on tight to stuff that's 20 years old, 50 years old. So now I'm holding on tight. I want everybody who's listening just for a moment, squeeze your hands even one hand, just squeeze it really tight. Just one's good, not two. And because I need the other hand to be relaxed. Now squeeze it really, really, really tight. We're just going to do it for 30 seconds. I'm so upset. I'm so hurt. I'm so afraid. You're so wrong. I can't get what I need. This negative belief combined with emotion, a negative belief combined with emotion, squeeze tight. Now in a moment, I'm going to ask you not to squeeze. No, don't do that. Keep squeezing tight and don't open up like, see how that hurt? You want to basically I want you to notice once you stop squeezing how your hand just wants to stay stuck that way. You feel the magnetic pull? It just wants to hold on.
Ooh.
And all you have to do.
I can't get it out.
It's hard. Wow. It's painful.
Wow.
If I'm in a group, I have somebody else's hand and they can just touch it. And I can do it myself. Mine actually went into a spasm there. But if somebody else outside of me was to touch it, it immediately releases. It just opens up.
Oh, wow.
Because all of our suffering ultimately is a disconnection from the truth. Because our parents are not connected to their truth of how much they love you. And people say, but I do love, I'm just mad at you. I say, yes, you love me until you're mad at me. The reason you're mad at me is you want to love me, but you're not loving me. Negative emotions is not the expression of an open heart. Negative emotion is the expression of us closing our heart. So really, it's like my mistake, my bad, but hey, I'm a wonderful person. I just need to process this. So I don't throw it out there. I don't use my sensitivities to change people, to change myself, to reprogram myself by looking at always the four basic colors of emotion: anger, sadness, fear, and guilt. They're always there. If you're stuck in anger, it's because you're afraid. Imagine a person who's angry and you say, you're really just afraid. I'm not afraid. Are you kidding? But what fuels their anger is they're still afraid. Or it could be guilt. Often we get caught doing something. We get mad at the person who caught us. Okay. So we're mad at you because we don't want to get the blame. And sometimes we're angry because really many times we're sad because we're afraid to express the anger. Sadness is a disappointment. And when there's an emotional pain to sadness, there's also anger. So what I found is that, particularly with children, with my kids, when I would let them fully express, what else are you feeling? What else are you feeling? They would go from throwing a tantrum to crying, to being afraid, they didn't always get down to guilt. Sometimes they would say, I'm so sorry, Daddy, I love you. They naturally go through those feelings in about 5 minutes, if you know how to validate them as they go through it.
John, you have gifted us such an amazing gift today of helping everybody who is emotionally sensitive or feeling more sensitive right now to be able to process those emotions. Well,
let me just finish that one little thing.
Sorry, I thought you were done. Go ahead.
So when you're upset, this becomes a discipline. You never suppress your emotions, just don't act on them. Don't use them to change somebody. and write out whoever you're upset with, pretend like, okay, it's all their fault. Write it out: anger, blame, sadness, disappointment, fear, and guilt. And say, now you, after you go through all four, you say what you want and what you don't want, what you want, what you want. That's always coming back to I want is so important. Then what you do is you imagine that person hears you and writes a letter to you saying, I understand you're angry. I understand you're sad. I understand why you're afraid. I understand you feel bad. And then you say, it's not your fault. It's my fault. I apologize. I promise I won't do that again. I'm here for you. I love you just the way you are. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. And that child part of your brain will immediately go, I forgive you. I love you. And then the third letter is you write out, right now, your love makes me feel. So you're reliving that past experience, creating how you would have felt had you gotten the feelings, the messages you needed. And that then brings up the truth of who you are, which is I'm this loving being and I deserve to be loved and I'm good enough just the way I am and I have a beautiful, bright future ahead of me. See, that is the truth. So all we're doing is an imaginary writing of letter, like somebody's hearing me and now they're giving me what I need. Why imagination? Because the fact that we're thinking we're not good enough is imagination. This is all our play of imagination. So you use a thorn to remove a thorn. You use your imagination to get in touch with those feelings like you're actually saying them. And you can start out by being upset in present time. And from your awareness back here, you say, and how does this relate to something in my past? And something will come up many times. Then you come back into the past as if you're a little child writing this letter to your parent, giving that child the ability to fully know what they feel, to express what they feel, the ability to know what I need to hear back. And now you write the letter back to yourself as if that person is actually apologizing to you and saying, I'm so sorry. I'm going to buy you that new bike. I'm so sorry you lost the other one, or I got mad at you. It's not your fault. You know, you're just a kid. It's okay. Everybody makes mistakes. I love you just the way you are. And we're going to go, you know, have a good time tonight. Whatever you need to hear as a child to feel loved and supported. And then ask yourself, when I'm being loved, how do I feel? And how you feel is, I feel safe. I feel encouraged. I feel confident. I feel happy. I feel joyful. I can forgive you. Life is good. See, that's the truth. That's all true. We just invent the other stuff because as children, we don't have a brain that can recognize that when our parents are upset with us, it's not about us. It's about them. It's about their problem. That's their problem. And we don't have the knowledge that we and everyone else on this planet deserves to be loved and treated with respect. And that's inherent inside of us as sensitive beings. That's why it hurts so much when we don't get it. We just expect that to be the case. But at the same time, to the little child, that's confusing. To the little child inside, it's like, I deserve love. Why am I being treated this way? I just don't understand. And that's what a lot of sensitive people feel. I don't understand. I don't understand. And I feel guilty. I don't know. Why should I feel guilty? Because you're not guilty, but the little child will always feel guilty when a parent deprives you of something you feel like it's your fault. That's what children do. It's my fault. If I'm not getting what I need, how do I have to change myself? And that's one level of the healing. But as a hypersensitive, it's so easy. We can start going into the deeper levels. And whenever you find yourself stuck at one emotion, you know there's 2 or 3 others that you can go look at. You want to shift gears from one to another, back to what it is you want, what you want. And then imagine someone giving that to you, then imagining how that feels. And as far as self-love goes, people say, how do we love ourselves? The most powerful way to love yourself is what I just described. Because when that parent is saying, please forgive me, what happens instantly is inside of you, I forgive you. Forgiveness is an automatic reaction when you're in the child's brain and somebody is saying they're sorry to you. And the inability to forgive is because our parents did not say they were sorry. They blamed us for the problems and we go, I guess I'm the problem. Whether they said it or not, that's the way we take it in as children. It's always my fault. It's my fault. Bad things happen to me. My fault. I feel bad. Because a kernel of truth from our higher self is that we do create our life, but we don't need to not love ourselves when we make mistakes. We need to learn from our mistakes.
John, thanks for transforming our lives all these years. This has been one of the most greatest privileges of my life. You have helped all of us so much. And Today, I just feel like it's one of the most special days of my life to get to talk to you. And I know our whole audience is just totally transformed and inspired. And what I just want to make sure is that everybody knows how to get in touch with you. So where do you want them to find you?
At marsvenus.com. You go right on the front page is a free course. There's one for singles, single men, single women, men in relationship, women in relationship, 4 different courses. Take your pick. They're right there. They're so good. We get rave reviews, just like with Men Are From Mars. Oh, people had so many rave reviews. This is your touch up. This is your updating it. Really practical introduction into these ideas that I do. And I also, if you've got time, every Thursday I do 10 to 1 o'clock answering questions at Facebook Live. And that's John Gray, Mars Venus on Facebook. And that's fun.
All right, everyone. All right, everyone, you heard it from John Gray. You know where to find him, and you know where to get more and more connected to yourself and understanding how to manage your emotions, how to use them to create what you want. And we both thank you for being with us today. Take care. Bye-bye.